Radio, home of the independently dope. Baby, you know you are our sunshine. May you stay tuned in, all right? What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Lily Mae, and you already know what time it is. It's consulting time. Let's get to it. Bringing you the greatest and the brightest creators, leaders, and innovators from around the globe. We'll always leave you with joy, jewels, and justice. Purpose over popularity is our motto. Now let's get to it. It's consulting time. Tap in to It's Consulting Time with your girl Lily Mae on Instagram Live, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and ID 104 Radio, home of the independently dope via the Live 365 app. You never want to miss these intentionally purposeful conversations with creatives, leaders, and innovators from around the globe. Tap in, tap in, tap in. What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Lily Mae. You already know what time it is. It's consulting time. Let's get to it. Bringing you the greatest and the brightest creators, leaders, and innovators from around the globe. We'll always leave you with joy, jewels, and justice. Purpose over popularity is our motto. Now let's get to it. It's consulting time. What's up, everybody? Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Yes, you already know who it is. It's your girl, Lily Mae. And yes, it's consulting time. Back to the basics. And so, guys, just to kind of give you a recap, it's consulting time back to the basics is a shift. It's a shift away from merely interviewing people and stepping into the arena of journalism as I grew up on it, right? I often tell people I grew up, watching Larry King Live. And I don't know how many of you remember Larry King Live, but, there was a certain way that he presented political and governmental information and also education. You know what I'm saying? So many different things. He presented just information in such a way that it was important. You feel what I'm saying? It wasn't like it wasn't gossiping, right? It wasn't all opinions. Now, we can put our opinions into what we're doing. Period. Because we all have an opinion, right? You have an opinion, I have an opinion, your mama got an opinion, your grandma got an opinion, daddy, everybody has an opinion. But we have to get back to the basics when it comes to journalism. LeVar, you are hilarious. See, somebody already coming in. The basics are fundamental. Everybody isn't a journalist. LeVar, you know what? That's amazing. That's amazing. And I agree. So, guys, before I bring out this spectacular young lady, I want to say this to you. We're everywhere tonight. We are on Instagram Live, so you may see me bumping here, and there. So know that you can tune in on YouTube, LinkedIn, all over Facebook and X, but I still call it Twitter. But what I want to first do is just talk a little bit about the history of journalism, and only for about five or so minutes. And then I want to bring out an amazing young lady who is a verified, bona fide journalist who truly does this for real, on a large scale, and not just for her own gratification and edification. She definitely tells stories of our people and people for that matter. Now, when we think about journalism, we think about news, right? We think about gathering information, organizing information, disseminating or distributing information, if you will. And this information can include like feature stories, commentary, and all of those things. And it's done through a wide variety of print, non-print. Today mostly everything is non-print. Now, honestly speaking, journalism, just like other professions today, wasn't always, held in esteem or regard, right? It was historically thought to be the practice of people that wanted to avoid real work. Now I'm just saying, okay. But realistically, the news, itself has taken on a new meaning, and I want you to understand there are so many types of news. And that's kind of where we're gonna go tonight. Marty and Kelsey will talk about their respective journalism journeys, but I think that one of the major things, y'all know, I like to give you information that, in my opinion, is necessary, because realistically, you cannot sit here and tell me that you are a journalist. You cannot tell me that you're doing these things if you don't even know how journalism came about. Because realistically, where did you get your basis for this? I hope you didn't get it from social media bloggers and influencers. I hope you got your basis from somebody that actually has studied in some form of fashion. And no, I'm not talking about, necessarily, matriculating and getting a degree in English or political science or whatever, which I'm going to be honest with you. I personally feel like, realistically, with journalism, you need to go do something in English. I got sense enough to know you do not write the way that you talk. The way I talk to y'all, honey, if I wrote like this, I wouldn't have made it through anything. And I think that that's one of the most important things that we're going to hit on tonight. And Marty spoke about this earlier on her social media. She talked about, the tact, right? The tact, and even for your clients and things of that nature. So as we matriculate, in everything that we're doing, because realistically, if you are a journalist or you're aspiring to be a journalist, I charge you, get some training, because media, both the news and fiction, they facilitate this social atmosphere for public debate and action. Journalism brings like the news of the day. It brings material, current interest, and importance to an audience. Now, this definition has gotten blurred because we have so many experts and gurus in this space who truly are only experts in their own mind. And we have to begin to scholarly critique the information that we're getting. Because regardless of what you will hear, there is black and white. Gray area exists in a very minute spectrum when it relates to this thing we call journalism. Now, the ladies can speak to you from journalism in practice in their respective areas, understanding that as technology and journalism is becoming more and more diversified, the lines between journalism and gossip, between journalism and entertainment, have narrowed. Okay? Journalism is a group effort, guys, from beginning to end. In the commercial press, journalism actually requires specialists whose work comes together in an interdisciplinary framework to truly be able to present what you see as the news. All right. So I don't want you to just think that merely because you have a cell phone or you have a tablet or somebody told you that you had influence, that you are a journalist, because there are levels to this thing. You can be a media correspondent, right? You can be a host, a podcast host, right? But I take this thing called journalism very, very, very serious, because journalism is the main driver for political action and debate in this atmosphere. Do not get tied into the word political, because I'm not just talking about presidential elections and elections. I'm talking about the politics of this world, because there are politics in everything we do. That's why it's important to know when information is scholarly, to know if information came from a primary or secondary source, and stay the hell away from these tertiary sources. Now, I'm going to bring my ladies out because I am really, really excited to have them. And I want to bring out Martie and Kelsey. And ladies, good evening.
Good evening. Happy Tuesday, ladies.
I'm really excited to have the both of you. Martie, I've known for a while virtually, and Kelsey also, and it's so funny. I'm always in Charlotte. I'm always in the DMV. We have not physically connected, but you know something, the more I work in this space, I find that there is beauty in these virtual relationships, because you get an opportunity to truly go through a variety of dynamics together. And so, ladies, I appreciate you this evening. So,
Thank you.
I'm going to start with you, Miss Martie. Introduce yourself to the people. Tell them a little bit about what you do in the journalism space. And then we'll have Kelsey, you'll take your turn. And then we're going to dive into tonight's conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Martie. I live in Charlotte. Like you said, I have worked in the media space for about 10 plus years. I'm coming from owning a PR firm full time, and transitioned into full-time journalism within like the last 2 years, year and a half. I'm a staff writer for Blavity, Detour, Black Wall Street, a couple other places, and freelance, mainly anything within like pop culture and travel. I like to say my style of writing is where culture and content meet. I just love to tell stories, especially the ones that, the mainstream try to let go of, or ignore or cover up. So that's usually my beat. And right now I'm just in this space of kind of bridging that gap between publicists to journalists, because those are two of the things that we need. I think I'm listening to you on things. So that I feel like that's where I'm feeling the void at right now, to where I'm giving that last bit of perspective from a journalist side, but also telling how publicists can kind of create that bridge and keep those relationships flowing, because we do need each other in this space. But I think there's a gray area sometimes that kind of tends to some confusion and tension. So that's a little bit of it.
All right, and you know what? We're gonna talk about that. Miss Kelsey, my sports diva.
Thank you again so much for having me. So delighted and excited to join you all this evening. So my name is Kelsey Nicole Nelson. I am a professor by morning. I teach at George Washington University, intro to news writing and reporting. So teaching our next generation of journalists here in Washington, D.C. I'm also a business owner of my own multimedia communications and consulting firm called Depiction, as well as my own podcast company called Listen In with K&N. And of course, the reason that most people know me is my sports work. So I work mainly with Fox Sports, but I do a lot of freelance work with a lot of companies, including NBC and Peacock. I've been on BBC, Middle Eastern Broadcasting Networks, you name it. I've probably talked on. I do a lot of work here on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore and many other stations. Previously worked for the Washington football team, now Washington Commanders teams. I've been a team reporter. I've done sideline reporting, covered Georgetown basketball and many others here. So mainly DC sports, and I do national NFL and NBA coverage. Sports is my main beat, but I've talked politics, I've talked public policy realm, I've done news, and I'm also the person that is not afraid to talk the intersection of race, culture, and sports, because they always do touch. And a lot of times people don't want to touch that. So usually I'm also the one that's called anytime we get interesting topics like our guy Aaron Rodgers on the vaccine and many other things that are happening in the sports world. I'm so excited to be here. I should also say I do a lot of comms work. I'm the person that says you can be a journalist and a comms professional. So I also do a lot of work with nonprofit work here in DC, helping them with comms, press releases, media, whatever they need. I'm the person that they come to tell their stories and to build their brand.
Okay, guys. So let's just put it out there. We have scholars here tonight to present information truly that you need if you really want to, work in the space of journalism. So, ladies, to start this conversation, I talked a little bit about the history of journalism, and I didn't want to give them the boring history, because for me, I like to go all the way back, right? I like to go all the way back to the Tang Dynasty. Yes, I am a nerd. Like, people just do not realize how much of a geek I really am, because I love to turn up, but I'm a total nerd. But, I think about, and being in school and learning about writing, learning about cuneiform and things like that. And that's what they used to present information back then. The first court report was done, back during like the Tang Dynasty. So when we think about journalism from the beginning, we think about what? Writing. We think about organizing. We think about researching, and we think about disseminating information. So, Kelsey, I'm going to come to you, and I want you to speak to when you first get an idea, or when an idea is presented to you. How do you decide if this is something that's worthy of presenting? And then how do you begin to research and formulate your story?
This question, you're taking me back to school right now. This is something I would discuss with my students. The biggest thing is it has to pass the newsworthy test, right? Is it newsworthy? Will people care, or how will you make people care? How can you tie it in to a timely events, right? What's happening right now in the world? So right now we know it's a very political world. We know a lot's happening recently with Iowa or things like that. So always thinking like that. And then also I also mainly consider who's the source, right, that I'm hearing this news from. How can I verify this information? Because the last thing you want to do is be a journalist breaking something that's not true, that's not factual. And especially since we live in a world of AI now and people are pulling from different sources that are not always the correct sources, it's very important to fact check. So I think that's my process. When people pitch me things, I have really good relationships. I know it was already mentioned, but I have good relationships with publicists, right? I have good relationship with sources, things that I've built over the 10 years of my broadcast career. So a lot of the stuff I get in my inbox, I know it's worthy, right? And then also the brand I've built. People know not to just send me anything, right, to come my way for media purposes. So I would say, once I get it, for instance, I'll be covering an event in DC on Monday. It's with the Ethiopian embassy and a brand new boxing federation that they're about to put out. So boxer I covered, his wife reached out to me, pitched me this event, sent me some great background on it. Obviously fact checked and saw everything was legit. And obviously going to go out there and hopefully break the story for the DC audience and breaking it on here now. But I think the biggest thing, like I said, research, use the internet, but check those sources. Just because you see it online does not mean it's true. Check that URL, all right? Make sure it's a reputable company that you're getting this news from. Check the author's background as well, right? You can research everybody nowadays. What have they written? What have they reported on? Who are they working for? All of those different type of things have to be researched, because a lot of times people will just go to the first thing they see pop up on Google, which is not always the right thing that pops up on Google. So I think that's the biggest thing, to please do all that type of stuff. And honestly, that's how you build your brand as a journalist, because when people feel like they can trust you and they know what you're saying is always going to be right and true, and they can take it to the bank and they can take it to their friends or whoever, you are going to be able to be that person that they tend to go to for news. It's the same reason why, even though I mostly do sports, people pitch me all types of things. just because they see my name and I've been able to build a brand. Of course, a lot of those things sometimes I'll have to refer to other people because that's not my main beat. But again, it's like, it's just, I'm thankful to be able to do that. But again, I have to stay there, and I never want to drop and be like, Kelsey was the one that said this and it was completely wrong or unfactual. Because to be completely right with you, I know I'm a Black woman working in the space and I don't get a chance to get things wrong. So it's very important that I get it right the first time and that people can believe the information that I'm putting out the first time.
There you go.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. What she said. And through all of, you know what I heard through all of that? Diversity, equity, and inclusion does matter. And you have to advocate for yourself. That's what I heard from everything. That's what I heard. But Kelsey, all right, Martie, we're gonna keep going with that. So we're gonna pull out something before we talk about Martie as a journalist. We're gonna pull out something that Kelsey said. Kelsey said that she has good relationships with publicists. Henceforth, her relationships with publicists and reputable media outlets lands more creditable information in her inbox. So, Martie, as a publicist, and I think you already know where I'm going, as a publicist, right?
Okay.
And as a journalist, how do you conduct research when you are kind of teeter-tottering a space where there's information that is presented, which may be presented to more or less, I don't want to say clean up, but to more or less present the story as it needs to be displayed, versus you as a journalist who is telling a story that needs to be told, but you also are wanting to make sure that you're using factual information, like Kelsey said, so that you're not getting fact checked because you are a Black woman in this communications and media space.
I would say, well, I'll start from the publicist side. Like Kelsey said, as far as being on the journalist side, how research is important. I need publicists to understand it's just that important from a publicist's perspective too. Do your research on that person. If you know you are speaking about a cookbook that is coming out, Kelsey is not the person that you send this to. And Kelsey she's not obligated to send that to someone else. She's nice and she might, but she's not obligated to. So that's the first part. There's so much research in these two fields. That's why they go hand in hand. It's almost like a car, to where you need the gas to operate the car, but if it's the wrong gas, it's going to mess up your engine and it's gone, right? So I tell people when you pitch, especially from a publicist perspective, you got that one chance. You know, you've already either built that relationship, possibly followed them on social media, maybe liked a couple, drop, hopefully they respond, who knows? But your one chance is literally saying, hey, I saw the story that you wrote on this. I have, a client that has a great perspective or was involved or would like to help you. If you're updating that story, if you want to dive more into it, here's, this person, and tell them quickly and to the point how this would help that person as a journalist. How is this going to help me? How is this going to be if I continue to write on this topic or, rehash this story? How is it going to be worth my time, beneficial? My editor's not going to cuss me out. It's not going to sit somewhere, under a desk or something. Just tell me how this is going to be beneficial to me by making, because it's beneficial to you. And normally, if it's really true and you did your research, those are usually easy questions. I kind of make it plain, even on like my mug rack, I say, things I don't cover would be politics, books, and religion, just because I like to stay very non-biased in things that I write, but those are three things that I cannot stay unbiased in. So I tell people, do not send me that. I get pitches every day for books. I get pitches every day for political, great, and I can pass them off, but that's just not, for me. So that research part doesn't just stop with a journalist trying to see if this is a credible source. It starts with the publicist seeing if this is someone who I even need to bother right now or get in contact with to see if they're the person to cover my client's story. And then from a journalist perspective, I think I've mentioned this before, and I know Kelsey can say this too, because we write for different outlets. Normally, we always have this channel in our head of like, where could this go? It sounds like a great story. It does sound like, I could see how an audience would be interested in, but it's not BBC worthy. It's not Fox Sports News worthy. It might be, Washington, a smaller Washington, worthy. And I always tell people, take it, because you never know where that could end up. And the fact that you respected her time, my time, you never know when we reach back into something with those bigger outlets, what you have is relevant now. What you have does make sense now. So if you do those steps, like you can address that who, what, when, where, why very quickly. And also benefit of it, especially if you're asking a journalist to look at this more, if it's jumping on something trending. If you can answer all those questions within that pitch, then normally you'll either get a response or you might hear back some other time. And I understand, like, on the publicist standpoint, cold pitching is very hard, especially when you're dealing with freelancers. People sometimes like, do you cover travel? I'm like, yeah, that's like my main thing. Oh, I saw you did an interview with so-and-so. Well, yeah, that was my main thing too. So it's kind of hard sometimes, and I get that. But there's always a way to approach something if you've actually done your research as a journalist and as, the publicist. I have stories that are purely based upon travel. They're purely based upon attractions. They're purely based upon go see this city and see what it is, right? But I'm able to pitch it myself to another outlet that I write for because I found a way to connect them and say, hey, I'm going to this city, and yeah, they're going to take me here, but there's also monuments or people in that city that kind of fall in line with what we cover. So that one trip can lend me 4 stories. And if you're able to do that as a publicist too, to where it's like, I have this one client, they have this, let's say their main vehicle is wine, but they have so many other things attached to them. You have 5, 6, 7 stories right there. You just have to find the actual journalist that covers one of those topics. So research is always going to be the foundation of it. So if you don't like to research and you don't kind of like to think outside the box, it's going to be hard on either spectrum, journalism or from the publicist side.
Wow, guys, just to kind of bring it back and add a little, intellectual humor, the first 3 letters of read are REA. Now, REA is also in research, right? So it's not the first 3 letters, but REA is in research. And so you have to be able to not just read, guys. And I think that this is the part that social media and technology has taken from us. Guys, reading its consulting time is the easy part. Reading its consulting time back to the basics, journalism, not fake news. Comprehension, what does that mean? But guess what? It goes beyond what does that mean. Now, what does it mean, and how do I interpret this so that you can make it practical for the people that you are needing to present this information to? And that goes back to what? Knowing the audience. Because who exactly are you trying to reach? And those are the things, guys. This month, as we talk about journalism, guys, these are the things that I really want to hit on. I always tell you, this isn't the popular information, but it's the purposeful information, because Kelsey and Martie Bowser are Black women in this space. See, a lot of people, because what? Journalism and entertainment, journalism and gossip, there are blurred lines there. So you feel that Black women are running this space when realistically,
no.
Turn on every news station on Samsung TV, Apple TV, cable TV, Peacock, Paramount, I don't care what you turn on. This is why it's so important to understand the foundation of journalism and what it looks like. Now, Kelsey, I know you are academian as well, and you teach. And so one of the things that in my research, because I'm an academician, research is my thing, journalism is not my thing. However, because I had to write so many theses, because I'm going through this whole process of fellowship research and capstone research and getting prepared for this next phase of my academic career, writing has just become it. So I tell people all the time, let me be ignorant and make ignorant social media posts, because y'all don't know what's going on with all these books that's around here on my desk. I'm just saying. But when looking and researching and trying to really find, theories and ideologies surrounding journalism, the Frankfurt School came up. And the Frankfurt School used a Marxist ideology. And if y'all don't know who Karl Marx is, I'm not taking it there for you. You're going to have to go and learn about him. But the Frankfurt School used this Marxist ideology to kind of explain how the dominant class owns the media. Now, let's just call it what it is. The powers that be own the media. They control the content. They sell the masses ideas that what? Perpetuate oppression in what? This economy, in this capitalist economy. Now let's just call it what it is. Let's go there. Because Martie, I know you don't like politics, but we're gonna go there tonight. You don't want to talk about it, but we're gonna go there tonight because we have to really hit the nail on the head. Now, I'm gonna make a statement, and then ladies, I want you to run with it however you want to run with it. When I delved deeper into this Frankfurt School, I found a statement that said something to the effect that the culture that this particular industry creates, it caters to a mass public that can't distinguish between reality and illusion. So they found that this culture industry, I'm doing it for the culture, this culture industry is generating a false sense of consciousness, and it's encouraging the consumers of this information to buy into a belief system that consistently and continuously allows capitalism to thrive. Now, ladies, Kelsey, have at it however you want to speak on this, because I know you're in the sports world and I understand what that looks like. I understand that there have been some great upsets in that space for our people. So you can keep it high level. But how do you suggest that as women of color, Black women, because guys, we're going to talk about that in a couple of months, that women of color and Black women are two different things, but I want to make sure that I'm being inclusive of everybody, because when it comes to journalism, they do kind of run hand in hand, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of months. But, how do you navigate and truly try to support the reality or actuality, as I like to say, when you know that a lot of times this space is pushing people to buy into the illusion?
There's so much in this question and so much in what you said, and I'll start how I start a lot of interviews, I never separate being a Black woman from my work, because I cannot take away any of my experiences growing up as a Black woman in this work. And actually, why I entered journalism is because I didn't see enough Black women, in this work. And I always say, when I walk into a room, it's very evident, what I am, and I own that. And I absolutely love it. But again, you can't separate the two. I think there's a lot to this question. You talk about this being a capitalistic society. Yes, it is. Journalism is about making money. And unfortunately, this is why you're seeing a lot of older journalists getting retired or pushed out or bought out, quite frankly, because people are trying to save money. This is why you also see, unfortunately, papers and newspapers falling under. This is why, everyone's trying to figure out the subscription model and how to make money. And honestly, this is why some journalists will try to cut corners, because they need clicks. They need to be able to sell. They need to be able to go to their bosses and showcase, this is what I can do for the paper. This is why I need to stay, right? So that all does exist. I think going back to the research part, like you said, a lot of the news that you see, yes, it comes from a lens, because even though we try to be objective in journalism, right, everybody has their own biases that they're bringing to their work. And yes, there are stations that try to push a narrative. I can't tell you how many times each day someone reaches out to me and says, hey, you work for Fox News. No. I work for Fox Sports. And going back to our research part, if you do your research, you'll see there are two very different entities. And if you ever seen my work, you could probably see that I don't know if I would ever be hired by Fox News, because again, I got a degree in African American studies. I'm very into a lot of the parts that race plays in our culture and society. Again, that's how I got into sports, because you think about what sports was able to do for society, for Black folks in general, and helping to advance narratives and push Black folks forward. I mean, sports was a large reason why integration happened, because they saw from a standpoint that they could not live without our talents. They saw that. There's a reason why we celebrate Jackie Robinson Day. There's a reason why the University of Alabama got integrated after being beat by a school that had predominantly Black players, right? So I can go into all of that. But all that to say, moving forward and where we are now, I think people have to realize, again, media is power, folks. Media is power. You really get to control a narrative. Media is why in DC, I'm very big on, I'm doing a lot right now with January 6th. And unfortunately, having to counter narrative of people that are saying it didn't happen or it wasn't as bad. I live in Washington, D.C. I saw, in person. It was not a dust up. There are still many effects and traumas that people are living here in D.C. because of what happened, and us just never thinking that something like that could happen in the most powerful city in the world, at one of the most powerful buildings in Washington, D.C. So all that to say, I think a lot of what happens with journalism and media is, yes, you should do your own research. Yes, you should research, but you have to, again, research the media companies that you're looking at. If you read the Washington Post, that Jeff Bezos has bought the Washington Post, right? And know that lens, that news is coming from, and how their media, model has shifted. Whoever you read, I used to work for the Black press. I wrote for the Washington Informer. Know the lens and the culture and the history of the Black press and their role in bringing news, and usually from a different lens to communities and cultures that usually aren't always represented, in mainstream. Know why what's written in the Informer is much different about the Wizards potentially moving to Virginia than what's written in the Washington Times, because there's cultural and economic impacts that are going to happen that not everybody wants to talk about, right? So all of that is super important. As I tell my students, as I said, I try to give them as much and vast, of media research as they can do for this exact reason, because it's very different with where it comes from. But again, you have to check the source, you have to check the knowledge, and then you also have to go back again and form your own opinion from what you're reading. Please do not read everything you see as fact. Again, check it. And I can't tell you that enough. And now there's no excuse or no reason why people can't go back and do their own research and write with what they're saying. But also, again, understand that journalism has many different forms, especially when you think about how Black folks were able to use journalism. We were excluded for a long time. Remember, this is the same, all of us right here, we come from people that at one point, could get killed for even trying to learn how to read and how to write, and knowing that our people had to learn how to do these things in order to spread messages, right? And you think about how journalism played a role in being able to spread messages to help free slaves. And there's so many things I could go into, but all that to say, think about us not originally being included. Think about us counting as 3/5 of humans, and now where we have been now, and again, how we've had to fight and pound our way into mainstream media to have our stories be told, to control our narratives. Why I work in sports, I really wanted to garner more positive stories in sports, because I got tired when I was growing up seeing so many negative stories, of our athletes, when a lot of times they're actually doing a lot of positive things that need to be portrayed, but people didn't want to tell those stories. They didn't think people would be interested, right, in those stories. And so that's why I said to check the source, check the knowledge, but you have to do your own work and research with anything you read. anything you see and anything you watch. Because if you're a journalist, you sometimes you have producers in your ear. Sometimes you have scripts that you're following. So also know that sometimes what a journalist says is not always what that journalist is thinking. All right. There's other things you can control,
Yes.
So I think there's so many things that people aren't researched, are well versed on, and it's not completely their fault, right? It's not completely their fault. They don't understand how journalism works. But this is why we have these conversations, and honestly just put it in the open and in the air for us to be able to have these fruitful conversations.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Period. With a T, even though there's no T in it. But wow. Okay. So Martie. Okay. All right. Yeah. Kelsey took it all the way there. And it's so funny because when she went to talking about the Jackie Robinsons of the world and why we celebrate, I love the fact that you tied in the importance of the history of Black people, in journalism, but you also tied in the fact that when we talk about the more controversial topics that are not about our people, it never happened. So these are the places. And ladies, I say this all the time. When everybody was talking about this Cat Williams interview and something else and the P. Diddy situation, Martie, you probably saw it. I posted, remember, the insurrection happened on January 6th. And I do that because, like you said, there are so many athletes and people and celebrities and just common people that are doing amazing things, but we don't want to talk about it. But honestly speaking, and it's so sad when I think about it, when I look at my hometown news back home and I listen to like the AM radio, I hear people on AM radio talking about more of the good stuff that Black folk are doing in small towns than I do anywhere else. We're not even talking about it. Hell, the Black station back home got shut down. You get what I'm saying? And I don't care how much mess is selling on television, guys. What did I say? And I want to go back. I want to go back to what I posted, and I want to read it because for some reason, a lot of people just read and dismiss. High culture, classical music, art in museums are for educated viewers. It will always stand above those of low culture, whom they considered mindless dupes of culture industry. Okay? What does that mean? The people watching reality TV and all of this other foolery are of low culture, according to the Frankfurt School. And this is a school that much of your mainstream media and journalists have learned from. Guys, if I can't stress anything to you tonight, I'm not a fan of if you can't beat them, join them, but I am a fan of learn so that you can navigate each system. Learn. Now, okay, for my biblical scholars, study to show thyself approved, right? Let your light so shine. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that I had to break it down for my practical folk, my political folk, and my biblical folk, because I got them all over here. All right, Martie, take it away because I want you to really dive into, and shout out to St. Louis. St. Louis just checked in. I'm excited. They have some amazing media programs there that are independent, and they're doing some very, very interesting things. And shout out to you guys for the cannabis education that you're doing. Everybody knows that baby, let me tell you, Lily Mae was so anti-arm, like, because I've never smoked. I don't want to smoke, no desire. So I'm like, However, once again, what we talk about tonight, research. When you research and you begin to talk to people that are researching and presenting information, I said, well, hell, maybe I need to invest in a dispensary since I don't smoke, baby. I'd be a millionaire out here in these streets, baby. I'm trying to tell you. But Martie, as we begin to wind down, I would love for you to, just kind of speak to your, style of journalism and kind of why it's so important and sacred to you. Because one thing, guys, one thing I know about Martie is this: Martie is a nice person. Martie will help you do anything. Martie actually helped me make my Canva look a little bit better because baby, them things was terrible. She tried to be nice. She was like, they ain't that bad. I'm like, oh no, baby. One thing about me, I don't think I know when it's bad. I'm trying to tell you, honey. But one of the things that I have learned about her is that she's very protective over her PR space and her journalism space as it relates to the story she tells and who she gets her information from. That I have learned. So Martie, take it away. Just, you can either talk about, your specific process or some high level points that people may need to take away.
I will say one thing I learned in journalism and PR, especially transitioning from music PR when I first started, which no. But integrity does not age well. So in order to keep conversations going, in order to captivate people, in order to grab people, especially, how things are now, those blurred lines, it can't be integrity-based media. It can't be, those stories that leave you feeling good, because after that, you want more of that, you want more of that. But it's easy to dwell and argue and complain and point fingers when it's from a negative, or I'll say dystopian narrative that separates and divides, and one thing I was very, I would say, cautious of, even on my PR side, I was very cautious of who I took as clients. If you were not filling a void in some way, I could not work with you, because because after a while, what type of media are we going to get? What type of outlets? I would like to say, when I closed my doors, the clients that I had literally could talk from everything about whatever their main vehicle was coming to me. If they were pushing a product, to their backstory growing up, how they got to entrepreneurship, what they're doing, how they're helping their community, what barriers they're breaking, what stereotypes they're breaking, what other stories. So I kind of follow that same route looking into journalism. One thing I'm very, very, very clear about, even working for, and I'll tell anybody this now, I started a big argument on Facebook. I am very Black, meaning I have a very Black opinion. Meaning, if you don't like those types of opinions, you might not even know the outlets I write for, which is okay. And then 2, you might not like the perspective that I write for. Now, with that comes having to, dwell into both sides, unfortunately, to where I do have to touch a little bit of social media culture and things like that, just because our people in general, we are the innovators, we are the movers. So some of the things that catch on the social media, when we first create them and they're funny, that's when I like to talk about them. But when they get turned into a spectacle and then turned around on this and negative stereotype, y'all can run in and have with it, because that's not what I was talking about when it first started. But I'm very clear about, I do not write or harp on Black trauma. I do not write or continuously push the narrative of Black deaths as a spectacle or something to watch. I'm not going to share someone's murder, assassination video. I'm not going to write too much about that. I believe Black people are mainstream media outlets that don't look like us are pushing to where they want us to be desensitized to what that looks like. And I'm not going to fall for that. And I'm not going to put my name attached to that, because I think that is a disservice to what I do as a journalist. One thing I'm always very clear about is the narrative of what I'm telling, whether it is, a trending story. I'm always going to make sure by the end of it, it either ended on a positive note or ended on a note to where now you're curious to go find out for yourself. Like I'm not a, I don't like to continue the conversation of detriment, pretty much. And I say that to say, even with my travel stories, it comes from a place of, okay, yeah, this is cool. We're in Charleston, South Carolina, but I need y'all to understand what Gaston's Wharf is. I need y'all to understand that this was, built on the backs of my ancestors. And that's, it's a great place to come visit now, but those pictures that you're taking for your Instagram are built on a wall that still has the fingerprints of children, slaves in them. So in some sense, my source has always been what they tried to cover and what they've tried to make obsolete. And it doesn't fare well sometimes with some outlets, I'll tell you that. But it's for, I don't write for the people who don't want the truth. I don't write, even with Blavity, we're continuously, trending story coverage platform. But I've kind of transitioned into the part of writing features and interviews just because I'm a first narrative. I like to not so much be my own source, but wherever that source is coming from, it's usually from that person I talk to. I kind of like to start the trend there. One big thing I always say is when we go back to research and just kind of lends into like the narrative side, learn the difference between a journalist and an influencer, and also learn the difference between a media outlet and a blog too. And that's no shade, because honestly, no pun intended, because honestly, those have become the voices of things. And I get
that's September. I mean, that's January 30th, Marty. You'll be back.
And I asked the question a month ago about that, as far as like, I'll just say, I asked, does Beyonce do Black media? Because it was after the question, as far as like when Lenny Kravitz came out and said that he never got invited to the Source Awards of BET Hip Hop Awards. Lenny, first of all, Source Awards been gone for how long, baby? So but it made me question as far as, and I saw people talking about it. But what it boiled down to me was how we value Black media. And the answers that I got on it, of course, after I filtered out the Beehive, which I'm a member of, but after I filtered out the Beehive, it was people don't know what Black media is. And, even someone as Kelsey, how she might not work for a quote unquote Black media source in some sense, she's still Black media because she represents a voice. And unfortunately, if they wanted to do something, she would be the first one to get disrespected on that channel. She would be the first one that they cut. Those are that's the Black media I'm talking about, to where someone say, well, Beyonce's publicist always looked out for us and put us in the room. Why do I have to be looked out for? Why can't I just be on the roll with the other, outlets? And I get it. But I think it's because of that, low culture versus high culture. There's been something that happened to where, because the low culture has turned into what's sensationalized, what's continuously pushed down our throats, and because it's easy to regurgitate, it's easy to replicate. How many of these people come out with the same stories? Like, literally, if you watch one of those blogs or something, they tell the same stories with a different person, maybe a different hook. It's a dating story. It's a podcast talking about why men and women hate each other. It's a somebody got shot here. It's a baby daddy situation here. It's a baby mama situation. It's the same story. It's a scammer here. It's a scam, but just different hooks and maybe a couple new characters with new clothes or anything like that. And that's fun. That's shareable. That's stuff like that. But it doesn't, again, after we talked about that, how did that help us progress to something? After you read that article about, that high school, that football team that actually was the cause that integrated Alabama State, you're inspired now. You actually want to go see if any of those people are still alive. You want to go see where their grandkids are. You want to go see this. Or after I write a story about, New Orleans, Mardi Gras. But no, there's also Bayou Road, which is the oldest thoroughfare in the country. It was a Black-owned street owned by a Black woman who owns every business on the block. So now you want to go see that. And that's usually where I say we have to remember, as a culture, Black people, we have a service to ourselves whenever we are looking at Black media outlets and Black journalists. Respect them in a sense to where they're the only people who care about your stories. If Kelsey decided to not talk about, anything within like a Black player within Washington who's doing great, they're not gonna cover it. They're gonna talk about Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift. They're not gonna cover the fact that Marshawn Lynch just paid for a whole school to get rent. They're not gonna cover that. You know what I'm saying? They're going, or yeah, we're gonna go to New Orleans and we're gonna talk about it's Mardi Gras, but they're not gonna cover the fact that, yeah, Toya just became Zulu Ball Queen after she donated $500,000. They're not going to talk about stuff like that. So there's so much into that to where, as a journalist and a publicist, again, my biggest thing is, what void am I filling by telling the story, or supplying the story? And how is this hopefully going to inspire or ignite something in someone to where they either go look for themselves and research more, they find a way to connect to it, it makes them want to, carry something on, or, I changed their mind, or I made them think about something in a new perspective. So that's why I kind of always go back to where I look at my writing style as where culture meets content, because I hope by the time you get through with this content, I've inspired you enough to where now you do something impactful for your culture, whether it is because of our race or because you're a woman, because you're 25, 30, something, whatever, your academia, but you do something to where you take whatever I wrote and it causes you to create, a positive domino effect versus just sharing it on Instagram and having a laugh.
Wow. Guys, journalism, not fake news. Marty, you started a conversation that is actually going to happen, because January 30th, that's the topic. Journalists or influencer. So I'm not going to even touch it tonight, because I have some big opinions on that. But guys, as we get ready to close out, and first and foremost, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having us. I love
And
this
always,
conversation.
yes, and I definitely will have you ladies back, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And guys, before we close out, in the spirit of the history of journalism, y'all know I'm a Virginian. I live in Atlanta, but I am two up and two down to the day I die. I love Virginia. I tell my fiance every day I will go back to Richmond any second, for real. But the interesting thing about Virginia is that there's a lot of history and culture regarding the rise of journalism there. And one of our governors, y'all know, when Jamestown was settled, back in 1600s and all of that. But there was a governor, William Berkeley, in Virginia, and he despised and cast down journalism, media, written press. He said, I thank God there are no free schools nor printed, and I hope we shall not have these 100 years for learning has brought disobedience and heresy and sex in the world, and printing has divulged them, and libels against the best government. God keep us from both. So when you hear these ladies talk about Black media, baby, this is why we're going to have this conversation on January 30th about journalists or influencer. Because, guys, Marty don't won't do it, but y'all know I will, because I don't really care. I care about your soul, right? I care about making sure that you are the best you that you can be, whether you want to be or not, because it is my sincere prayer that something said under the sound of one of our voices tonight will convict and vex your spirit to the point where you want to make a change. where you want to do something different, where you dare to be different and be a wise media consumer and producer, and begin to take control of the narrative that is so eloquently presented about us by other people, but then we perpetuate it and like and comment and argue with one another about ignorance. We can't continue this. If you want to be a journalist, find an actual mentor and not somebody that can just get you on the red carpet in one of the blackest cities in the United States of America on the East Coast. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to learn what you really need when you out there. You got to sit down and get a notebook or do this with the people that aren't out there. Because I tell you one thing, you might see Kelsey, but you only going to see Kelsey in very distinguished places, getting her information and covering her stories. And it's not that she thinks she's any better than anybody else, but she's set apart. Why? Because she studied to show herself approved. She has proved herself over and over and over because we have to do it. And if you don't have to do it, it's because you're in a space where being okay and being mediocre is just fine. But if you have to continue to prove yourself and you have to find another story and you have to present that story, and that story has got to do some numbers for the powers that be, that's when you know. That's when you know that you are truly on the road to excellence. And guys, we're going to close out tonight. Really, Martie, Kelsey, thank you so very much. Tonight has been amazing. Guys, come back next Tuesday. We are going to continue this conversation about journalism and not fake news. It's your girl, Lily Mae. It's consulting time. Back to the basics. And it's been a wonderful night. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.